Hello and welcome to From the BON, the Burnley podcast, and I'm Simon Evans, and with me is Chris Bowden and Paul Woodhouse as we look back on Burnley's Friday night game against Middlesbrough, look ahead to the midweek fixture with Derby County, and chat about a few other things as well, no doubt. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Smashing.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Yeah. We're recording this as we usually do on a Sunday. It feels a long time ago, does that Friday night game, but looking back on it, a point, would you say that was a point gained, 2 points lost, a fair result? How do you assess it?
I think it's a fair result that you'd take, considering it felt like they had the slightly better chance, especially in the second half, but we also had some excellent opportunities to put it away. It was very much a game of two halves, wasn't it? With wins at the back and wins at the front and wins at the side, and it was obviously a horrible night at the Turf that we all adore. And there was just we were complaining on the last pod a little bit about having to play Friday nights, but there was something about Friday that felt a little bit special. I think we were making noise from the get-go. We were on the front foot. It was howling a gale. And it just turned into a little bit of a silly game at times, and it was more entertaining for it. I think it was the most entertaining game we've seen all season. But all told, I think we were shown up in certain areas. We were quite easy to carve and work through the middle. Sometimes when sides are a little bit quicker and they're able to split the ball and they're able to separate the two Joshes, it's quite easy to either run through them or pass through them, and I think we saw that a few times in the second half. But similarly, we did the same to them, and were it not for some absolutely woeful decision making off both Hannibal and Anthony, we would have probably got 3 points.
Yeah, there were chances, weren't there, in that game to win it, Chris? But would you agree, fair result?
Yeah, absolutely. I said that first time they've nicked one against the direction of the play, the run of the play early on, and they almost seemed to stumble into it. Really, it just peeled off the back of Estev. I don't think I wouldn't like to pinpoint any single bit. I just thought it was a defensive failure overall. The goal is a poor one to give away, but then we just hammered away, and it was like old school Burnley without creating chance after chance. It was just sustained pressure, and eventually sort of they found a way, and so we might go into it later on. That there's sort of having a shot from outside the box. It seems a rarity in the modern game, and it's he's bought a ticket, and he's it's a strange goal. It's just I don't even know if he's intended to put it in that spot, Roberts. He's just managed to lob him almost, and it's poor goalkeeping, really. But it's a decent effort, all told. And I say, getting to so many good opportunities to create great chances without sort of forcing many saves. And I think I was listening to a couple of their lads being interviewed after the game, and they were saying that we feel that we play the best football in this division, and I said they did play some good stuff at times, but a lot of the time, like Woody says, if you can manage to sort of get behind Brownhill, which his eyes are more focused on going supplementing the attack, really, you can get at Burnley. But a lot of the time it was sort of more a ball over the top, trying to use Conway and whatever that fellow was called, Cappuccino Latte or whatever he came on as a sub. But surprisingly, how he avoided even a booking for grabbing Connor Roberts by the neck, forcing his face into the ground, and then aiming a kick at him. It was an interesting bit of refereeing. But Yeah, I say they 2 or 3 glaring opportunities, Boro. But when you sort of compare those to the openings Brownhill's had a chance where he should have taken a touch before, rather tamely shooting at goal. Hannibal has to pick Anthony out, and you see Anthony had a similar situation as well. And I think probably the disappointment was the subs Parker made after an hour. You're thinking he's settling for a point here. Sort of taking Sarmiento. I'm saying we don't know if Sarmiento had a knock or whatever, but it seemed strange to take J-Rod and Sarmiento. Sarmiento looked our most likely, really, on the night. And in the end, with the conditions, it could have, you're just praying, the wind and the rain doesn't play into things, and nobody makes a mistake. And a point apiece is a good result in the end.
Yeah. I mean, the Connor Roberts goal, I've watched it a few times. And I've seen, some people saying, like, well, the wind helped it. And I think it perhaps did, favour him a little bit in some ways. But I can't think, what else would he be trying to do? Like, he's gone for a left-footed, lofted shot from distance with the keeper off his line. I think maybe we're being a bit unkind on Connor Roberts, because what else was he trying to do other than lob the keeper and put it in the back of the net? I mean, there was nothing else he was trying to... It's not a cross shot situation. He was central. He wasn't trying to blast it and he's mishit it or something. No, I think that's an absolute goal of the season from Connor Roberts, to be honest. I mean, it's just the fact that it's his wrong foot and it's our fullback in a centre-forward position lobbing their keeper does feel like weird. But I don't think it were a fluke. Do you, Woody? Or
I don't know. I mean, he said it came off his left bunion. So if Connor Roberts says it's come off his bunion, then it's come off his bunion. But I mean, yeah, at first I thought that looked it looked weird, and it had a weird trajectory to it, But I still don't know whether wind hit it from the right, left, front, back, or whatever. But when you look at it on replay, it looks like an exceptional effort. But to Chris's point, like the keeper, their keeper, I don't know what the devil he was doing.
No,
flapping at that a little bit, but it's still a good shot. It's still a fantastic effort. It's a fantastic goal.
Yeah,
you think it were a fluke, Chris?
Well, it's not like sort of CJ Egan-Riley where he's just clipped it into an area and hoped maybe someone gets a touch on it. But I mean, it's quite clearly he's attempting to beat the goalkeeper. I don't think he's caught it as he wished to. I mean, if you're going to lob the goalkeeper from there, you sort of like, dig into it a little, don't you, and try and get that sort of elevation. I think he's just tried to hit the target, really, and he's ended up the goalkeeper. I think Schwartz was sort of pinpointed. His footwork's appalling because he doesn't. He's almost like Shilton with that Andreas Bremer free kick in the semi-final in Italian. Where he doesn't move at all. He just has this rather tragic back pedal that and he ends up in a heap and the ball ends up in the back of the net. But you take it. I mean, they certainly deserved it. On the sort of. Territory and possession and pressure and the way they won the ball back high up the pitch time and time again, and Middlesbrough couldn't get out, and I'll take them any which way they come, off someone's backside or whatever. It doesn't matter.
No. We'll see. We'll maybe hear more about it from Connor Roberts sometime. But to me, that left foot, it looked very familiar to a guy I've been watching this season in Inter Miami. To be honest, very much so. But it was a funny performance. Obviously, Egan Riley missing for the first time this season. Yeah. How do you think, Chris, we coped? Egan's come in. He's an experienced player who's been out for quite a while, hasn't he, in terms of first team opportunities? How do you think he did? Because we've obviously conceded for the first time as well in a good run.
I always look at sort of individual battles and things like that, and I think Conway was pretty much nullified, and then Lat had the opening from a ball over the top, which he just doesn't connect. I think it hit his shin, and Trafford managed to get a hand on it. But Look over the piece. I thought in those terms, he's settled in quite nicely. He's used the ball reasonably well, and he's not looked overly stretched. But then again, we've given away, I'd say, 3 or 4 glaring opportunities over the course of the game. Over the course of the 45 minutes, the second 45 minutes. But I don't think I don't think he sort of affected the structure of the side or the flow of the team. Like I say, first half was arguably as good as we've played, considering the calibre of opposition for a spell. I mean, you've got your Ekdal and Worrell back there as well on the bench, and it's a shame to see Egan Riley miss out. Because I think we were saying in Friday's preview that he's one of the success stories of the season, but it just shows again, the depth of the squad and the quality. How the options we have in reserve are frightening.
Yeah, coming up on Tuesday, we've got Derby County. That's a different sort of game. I don't think we're so entitled that we're going to be like, in angst about drawing at home to Middlesbrough, who are one of the better sides in the league. But we would be a bit angsty if we don't get 3 points on Tuesday, I think, would I mean, we looked at the comments earlier from Derby County's manager, Paul Warne, who is saying that their defeat at Leeds United, well, as he put it, they're a Premier League team and we're a League One side with a bit of sugar on top. But I know what he means. The division is a bit like that, aren't there? There are those teams at the bottom end who you feel like are still in League One, even though they've come up. You can tell the history of the team is a League One side. And there are teams at the top, like he was pointing out, they've got a 25 million man Leeds on the bench and all that kind of stuff. Undoubtedly true. We're in that category of being the Premier League team in this situation against it. We've got to be putting them to bed, haven't we, on Tuesday night?
Of course we do. I'm just looking at the table now, and it's like 14th, which is Coventry. They're on 21 points. All at the bottom are on 15, and Derby are 16th on 20. So it's one of those situations where, 1 or 2 bad results off the bounce, and they've just lost 3, drawn the previous 2. They're right in it, aren't they? Literally everybody in the bottom half of the table is right in it. So they're looking at a completely different set of circumstances. Literally everybody in the bottom half of the table is trying to survive. And I can't for the life of me think that they're going to turn up on Tuesday and try and give us a game. I can see that they're going to battle their little tiny hearts out just for a point and try and shore things up. Whether they can do that or not with their sugar on the top is another thing entirely. And I mean, come on, we've got to have, we should have more than enough to beat Derby, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, they're a funny club, aren't they, Derby, really? Because obviously they've got that great history, and a really great history if you go back to the 1970s, obviously. But even, through some of our troubled years, Derby were a big club. When we played them in the FA Cup, we were massively underdogs in that game. We've seen them up in the Premier League while we've been down in the lower divisions, and they've been through a rough old time with the ownership of the club and everything else, and they've clawed their way back into the Championship. They're just going to be in survival mode here, trying to nick a point, aren't they, Chris?
You'd have thought so. Yeah, they've won 1 in 10. And the fans seem to be clamouring for Paul Warren's head. Like I say, that the interview we did with BBC Radio Derby after the Leeds games not really enamoured him to the support. I mean, I say they were, you're 2-0 down, and they wanted to sort of try and make a game of it, and he's obviously damage limitation. But yeah, to then come out and say essentially we're a League One team with a bit of sugar on top. I mean, is that honesty, or is that sort of, doing yourself down a bit? They're a Championship side. So they're not in the bottom 4 as we speak, but they're, Burnley they've already. I mean, they said Burnley's performances have improved significantly, I think, since the Millwall defeat. But the sort of warning signs are there that Portsmouth are as bad as any side in this league, but. They made Burnley sweat for the points at Turf earlier this season. Plymouth, another one that but for Burnley won a penalty and they scored it, and that was the only goal. But it wasn't a penalty where they've created a chance and someone's been upended through on goal or whatever. It's just like a nothing challenge on the edge of the area where Josh Cullen's like gone in there and got a kick and the referees give it. It's it wasn't great on the night, so the complacency shouldn't be there, but and say Derby are a threat from set pieces, and it's one of those. If they nick one from a set play and you're behind again, it can be one of those tricky nights. But no, I'd expect Burnley, but they've a great record against Derby in recent times. As you say, they're a fabulous club. So Burnley fans will always remember that Saturday afternoon at the baseball. That the replayed replay after the fog.
Yeah.
And, standing in there for God knows how long after the game, singing Jimmy Mullen's "Claret and Blue Army." It was just one of those magic moments. That just when the club was turning in the right direction again, thankfully. And we've had many a good night there since. Stan's team in the second division promotion season went there and beat Premier League Derby. And then you think of getting relegated out of the Premier League and Derby throwing everything at it financially, and taking our captain off us, an offer he couldn't turn down, and it turned out to be the wrong move for Shackle. And I don't think that was one of the comedy nights, wasn't it? Shackle and Keogh, like a comedy of errors, as we absolutely murdered him at the turf. And I couldn't tell you the exact stats. I think we're unbeaten against Derby for knocking on 20 years, something like that. So considering the times we played them in that period, it's a good record. But I'd expect that to continue, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those games where they've got a lot of men behind the ball. We've got a lot of possession. Can we break them down? I'm looking at that game and saying, right, there's not going to be a lot of space again. So it's another tricky one for Koleosho. I saw some discussions online about Koleosho's form, and somebody said, I think he'd do better if we get back in the Premier League where these defences play a high line against us and he can go charging over the back of them and use his pace. He's in tight spaces all the time. It is difficult for him in this league at the moment. But Sarmiento, you're looking for to open something up, really, aren't you? In that game, whether he plays him centrally or wide, we'll see. Whether or not he sticks with Jay up front, or does Fleming get the nod now that he seems to be fit again? So, quite a few selection choices. We'll see if... I don't know. There's been no indication Egan Riley's a long-term thing, is there? So he could be back in the picture, hopefully. But it's going to be one that the turf's going to be cold and windy again, and it's going to be all about just breaking them down. I can't expect an expansive, nice game of football, I don't think. But the day after, on Wednesday, we'll see how expansive that's going to be, because Burnley are holding their fans forum at Burnley College. Chairman Alan Pace is going to be... There's been an opportunity for fans to apply for a ticket, one ticket per person. They have to be approved by the club and then turn up with ID that matches their ticket as well. And all questions have to be submitted for approval first, and we'll see which ones get chosen and which ones don't. I'm sure we'll hear... One of the beauties of social media is if somebody's sent in a question that doesn't get asked, let alone one that doesn't get answered, we'll hear about it, I'm sure, on Twitter and on Up the Clarets and various other forums. But would it, if you were going along to Burnley College, which you won't be doing, but if you were going along to Burnley College with your correct ID and having submitted for yourself for approval, and you had that chance to put that one question in to Alan Pace, what would you have asked him?
Are we still looking for a drummer?
Yeah,
go on. What would you ask him?
Probably something along those lines, because I couldn't be bothered. I don't know, to be honest with you. It's throw it over to Chris and let me have another think.
What'll be on your agenda, Chris?
Well, it's one of those, isn't it? You want to ask something about now and potentially January, But you also want questions answering about what the bloody hell happened in August, in the latter days of August. Particularly in that final week of the window, where the rug was pulled from under Scott Parker. Like, what on earth went? What on earth happened? Was it a sort of promise to agents that if you find someone you can go, or was there certain sort of clauses had to be met, etc. But it just felt very rushed, very shambolic, and
chaotic.
It could have been a huge turning point, going from those two opening wins and the togetherness and the sort of feel good factor to all of a sudden putting out a scratch side at Sunderland, a scratch side at Wolves. And then, had it gone the wrong way on the Saturday against that lot, it could have been, there could have been hell to pay. And, as it since, we still look short because of that business. And, you believe there's money available in January and that'll be, hopefully remedied. But like I say, we're now, we're bordering on, what is it, 3 years? Is it 3 years or so since they came in? I'm losing count. And we've basically got J-Rod and Hunt-Tonji at the moment as fit centre forwards, and it's not an acceptable situation, is it, for what we believe to be a team sort of hovering between the Premier League and the Championship, with ambitions to be getting back there. That needs remedying. And
I'd like to know what the January plans are. Are the people he's prepared to sell this January? Are they looking to keep powder dry? Are they looking to bring people in? I'd like to know their intentions around this window.
If you think about 2 years ago, think about that window 2 years ago when, to all intents and purposes, we were promoted in the January, and they went out and they signed Foster, who, for me, the jury's still out. Ekdal, who has looked half the part before being jettisoned and then being injured. So again, you'd have to say, you couldn't put a tick next to his name necessarily. And Obafemi, who, you put a red cross next to. So if the business was, so well on that basis, it was so poor. But then again, you look at last January, and when again, to all intents and purposes, we were doomed. They managed to bring Esteve in, who's been a super signing, and Assignon, who looked like a decent addition, and I think we wouldn't have minded if it had stayed in the end. But it's a big opportunity. This, I've gone from thinking we will be top 6, but maybe not threatening the top 2, to thinking it's between Leeds, Sheffield, and us, and where does the magic roundabout stop at the end of the season? Which 2 go up automatic? And I think the January business could be the difference. And instead of it, as it stands, as someone pointed out earlier on, if the season ended today, I think we'd be facing a 2-legged semi-final tie against Blackburn, and I think Sunderland would be playing Middlesbrough home and away, wouldn't they? And it'd be some
some playoffs, that wouldn't
it? On the face of it, but it'd be bloody horrible, wouldn't it? Your bloody heart would be 10 to the dozen every time they got in our half.
Oh yeah, imagine that. I mean, the people talk about bragging rights after derby. That stuff you gets recalled for the rest of your life, isn't it? A playoff derby, that would be. Ooh, I'm almost hoping for a 3rd place finish now. Thinking about that, it would be amazing.
If we can guarantee you come through it, great, absolutely great.
No, there's no guarantees in this league in the playoffs for sure. I mean, I'm not so sure about it though, because you look at the league table, and I'm not so sure that neither Sunderland or Middlesbrough can't get themselves into the top 2. They could both. I think they're both capable of hitting one of those 8-game runs that suddenly catapults you up there. So there might be a few twists and turns yet.
But the sort of history suggests that us, Leeds, and Sheffield are the ones who can maintain it over the last 2 or 3 years. That it's
that's true.
I say Sunderland have they've both been in and around the playoff picture, but neither of them have troubled the top two, have they? In recent times.
Mm-hmm. Just going back to that fan forum, though, I mean, Alan Pace doesn't really do many interviews with the local media, as we've mentioned on several occasions. He doesn't put himself up for a question from supporters clubs, doesn't really deal with supporters clubs. They have the fan advisory board, which, has been discussed extensively, is more of a sort of consultation process with a selected group of fans rather than a sort of question and being questioned by sort of supporters groups and so on. And here he is, and he's a fans forum, but he's vetting the questions beforehand. And to be fair, and we'll see how it spins out, the event is being compared by Radio Lancashire's Scott Reed. So you would hope that Scott has managed to, wangle the degree of freedom to throw in a few questions and follow-ups there as well to make it a bit more interesting. But it will be interesting. But he does seem, either of you answer this one, he does seem that, like, our chairman, who's full of ideas and full of vigour and clearly is passionate about the club and his role in it and everything else, but seems very wary of sort of free debate and discussion about what's going on.
But also, as far as he's concerned, it's a very American way of both running sports clubs and business. For them, it's a business. They've come in. It's their money on the line. They're running it. So therefore, they will make all the decisions.
Yeah.
So I still don't think it's all lip service when you start hearing, people talking about community clubs, etc., who come from outside the community and are still trying to get their head around it. For them, it's a business. For him, he doesn't want to, be shown up and look too ridiculous, especially in front of fans, etc., with questions he might not necessarily be suited to answer, really. But I don't think it then becomes really a joke of a forum if you aren't willing to answer the hard questions and be authentic in front of the fans, because that's when you start getting found out. So, in a way, it could be damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. But we'll find out, won't we? There's no point, there's no point crucifying him before he...
No, not at all. It might be a very good discussion. It might be a very good discussion, and Scott Reed will be a good presenter, I'm sure, and we'll see what comes out of it all. In fact, if you are going to the fans forum, please do let us know. Bung us a message on Twitter or other ways of reaching us on social media. You can send us a DM. I think they're open, our DMs. You can send us a DM. Tell us what it was like, or if there happens to be a recording of the event, it'd be nice to see. Not that we're suggesting anyone surreptitiously records it or anything, but if there is, if there's an official video put out of the event, then we could obviously make our own minds up from it. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Well, people seem to think I had a downer on Alan Pace because he didn't do, a lot of. So I mean, I probably about 18 months or so that before I finished, that ALK were in the club. That's whatever. That's his prerogative. I'm not going to take that personally. I'm certainly not going to be bitter about it. I mean, Mike Garlick could be, very hard work to get hold of and to pin down. Certainly in the latter years of his
absolutely
his chairmanship. So usually there would be an annual sort of end of season sit down with Mike Garlick, and maybe every now and again you might get one at the end of a transfer window just to sort of explain the club's the club's sort of hopes and thoughts on that, and that didn't always happen either. But no, the one thing about sort of ALKs, it's from the sort of September-ish to the end of December, start of January when they took over, we were sort of told time and again, myself, probably yourself, Simon, Alex James, who was doing Lancs Live at the time. We were sort of being told that, don't worry, there'll be avenues, there'll be routes to the chairman. He'll speak, he'll let you know what's going on, and you'll be able to get hold of him. Blah blah blah. And then, lo and behold, the first interview that they did was with the Mail Online, which is, you think fine. I don't know the state of play now, but at the time, the Mail Online was the biggest platform for them to. I can understand that if they're coming in, they want as many people to read about the takeover and what the plans are. And then he did the press conference as promised, although, with it being a Zoom, it was open to absolutely everyone on the planet who wanted to be a part of that. And, actually trying to get a word in edgeways was difficult. But I think it's like I say, in the following 18 months, myself, Alex, and Andy Jones from The Athletic, we sat down with Alan Pace once, sort of during the summer window of 20, it might have been 21, 22, yeah. And that was it. Can we speak to him after 22 when we get relegated? No, there'll be no interviews. Can we do anything at the start of 22, 23, starting back in the championship? No. And that was my only. Don't promise. I mean, I'm not saying the promises came from Alan necessarily, but it came from his PR. It was sort of, you're led to believe that you're going to have access, and access wasn't there, as it turned out. And then just before I finished was the sit down with Vincent at Burnley College, where he sort of, Alan came out and he said, I'd rather do this sort of thing than communicate through the media. And that's fine. It's great that the fans have a route, to speak to him as well. Absolutely so. We've liked to think ourselves as conduits of that in the past, and times change and all that. But I don't see why you can't do both.
No,
it's it just seemed a bit of a shame, really. And I say I've no bitterness about it. You move on and get on with it. But
it's a funny one, what Woody was saying about American approaches to it, and now you mentioned that, Woody, and I'm thinking, the big club owners over here, with one or two exceptions like Jerry Jones at the Dallas Cowboys, who basically turns up in the mix zone after every game and gives his opinion on what the quarterback and the coach have done, fairly regularly comes out and appears on local radio and all that kind of stuff. But he's very much the exception. You look at somebody like one of the big successful owners would be like Robert Kraft at the New England Patriots, who also owns their MLS team, New England Revolution. You don't hear much from them unless there's a big event like when they got rid of Bill Belichick or they're appointing a new coach and that sort of thing. But they're not constantly talking to the media because they've got a massive staff of people. They've got a general manager and a front office. And maybe that's something that's missing at Burnley, is that, that American model is fine. We don't hear from Alan Pace. He's the guy with the money and making the big decisions, but he's the owner. He's out of sight. He's sat in, in America, he'd be sat in a box with his family, and you could totally imagine Pace doing that. But in that case, if you have a general manager in that American model who is speaking fairly regularly, who is responsible for the sort of overall direction of the club's squad and the coaching staff and that kind of stuff, you'd hear from them. And there's nobody who seems to fill that role. I mean, internally, there may be people who you could call a general manager at Burnley, but in the public way and the way that we approach it, and there isn't that person coming out to speak on behalf of, the management and direction of the club, if you like.
I think that's a very fair point. And when you've kind of basically, and obviously Chris knows as well as anybody, when you've upended all that, gutted what was there previously, and then not really replaced it with anything. There's some things he's done extremely well. I think a lot of the stuff that's on YouTube, a lot of the press conference, etc., that was always there. But, I think they're doing a far better job of communicating that level of stuff. But from the management of the club, the ownership of the club, that voice I don't think is there. And while I think things like fan forums, technically speaking, a step in the right direction, you still know perfectly damn well that it might not go as far as it needs to. And there feels to have been, there still feels to be quite a vacuum, if not a distance, between ownership and fans.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out on Wednesday, because these things can go either way. You know, fans can really enjoy being in the company of somebody who's important to them, represents their club, and can come away with a nice warm feeling and a connection. Or they can refuse to answer questions that people want answering, and it can go the other way. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes on Wednesday. We will find out from our dear listeners, I am sure, and we will be back to discuss the performance against Derby on Tuesday and the Fans Forum and everything else when we drop into your pod queue on Friday morning. Until then, have a great week and up the Clarets.